Ooh, should I talk to an insurance adjuster?
No.
Yeah, no. Next slide.
We can move on.
Yeah, no. Obviously, this can be a bad idea for a whole host of reasons, especially if it's a case where it's a possibility that liability can be contested.
Yeah.
And this gets especially problematic when those conversations are recorded.
It does. And, it's almost like the Miranda rights. It's not to the point of that, but they will kind of twist things that you say or misinterpret things or try to use it against you. But I think the other more critical thing that we're seeing is adjusters are trying to settle these cases with people and preclude their rights as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. We're seeing people get presented an offer and a release within 48 hours of an accident.
Oh, first conversation. Mm-hmm. Report case. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, how about $1,000?
Yep.
And they haven't even been to the doctor yet. Or they'll say, well, we'll give you $1,000 right now, and we'll pay $5,000 or $10,000, whatever the number is, for future medical costs, as long as those medical costs are incurred within the first 3 months. And right after a wreck, that may sound somewhat reasonable, and oftentimes a lot of people have a need for immediate money. But $10,000 doesn't get you very far if you're injured and need any amount of treatment.
It really doesn't.
And how many times do we see where treatment takes way longer than 6 months? Someone has a nagging neck injury or a shoulder tear. That was one we were discussing earlier. Mm-hmm. A tear in their shoulder, they have a knee injury, and you have to schedule a surgery. You have to go have the surgery. You have to rehab the surgery. Well, that can take months, if not over a year, to get through an injury, let alone that's assuming that injury actually resolves back to 100%. Mm-hmm. There may be future medical costs associated with that injury. A conditional release is going to basically shut all that down right out of the gate. And oftentimes those are presented as a way for the insurance company to mitigate their downside and mitigate their cost, and kind of wrapped up in a package of convenience and speed when it's presented to the claimant. But unfortunately, a lot of times it just means the insurance company isn't going to have to pay what they actually owe.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of times those releases, the cap on medical damages are sometimes $5,000, $10,000. And we've already discussed that by the time you sign that, you don't know what your bill is at the hospital. Very rarely are you given a bill when you leave the hospital. And very rarely do people understand that if they went to the CT machine at Springs Memorial Hospital or MUSC Hospital in Lancaster, it may be $25,000. And so they don't know that. And so if you sign a release and cash your $1,000 check and release your case where they say they'll pay up to $5,000 in medical bills,
in a shocking amount of cases,
you have released your claim against that at-fault driver.
And it's horrible. But the good news is we have had instances where we've been able to get an insurance company to look past that conditional release and set it aside, because sometimes they're signed immediately after a wreck when the claimant is under duress. And we've been able to set those aside and open the policy back up. So even if someone has been involved in a situation like that, it doesn't hurt to talk to a lawyer and see if that's going to be the case.
You can it doesn't hurt to ever talk, because like you said, there may be some options that we have.
Yeah.
But this is why we tell people it's critical. It costs nothing to talk to us. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't walk into divorce court. You wouldn't walk into criminal court without having at least talked to a lawyer and explored your options and know what rights you have.
Exactly.
And so why would you do the same thing and deal with a multi-million-dollar company that does not have your best interests at heart and rely on them to tell you the truth? They're relying on a lot of these people being unsophisticated. And I'm not meaning that in a bad way. I'm just saying they're not sophisticated.
They're not accustomed to the process.
They're not accustomed to the process and the ins and outs of everything. And they're taking advantage of that any way they can.
Exactly.